The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. Every 4 to 6 weeks or so, we do another special segment. It's just called Another Viewpoint, and it's time for another one of those. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, during Another Viewpoint segment, we just kind of tee off on things that are teeing us off. And it's an opportunity for viewers to have sent us email to talk about things that are bothering them. We do have a letter to read tonight from someone, so we'll get to that. But the first thing is not, it's not a very pleasant issue. It's not something that I think either Melanie or I take pleasure in doing. However, it does need to be done. For regular viewers of this show, earlier this summer, we had County Executive Jane Vandehei on the show. One of the questions that came up during that time was something that had been brought to our attention about an alleged illegally held closed session of the Aviation Committee for Winnebago County. Now, we asked Ms. Vandehei about that when she was on the show, and she basically poo-pooed it, for those of you who saw that show. She acted like there was nothing to it. She essentially sat here very mute and really didn't say much about it. Since that time, we raised a couple of issues about that after the show, but really for the last several months, that issue has not been brought up by us at all. However, it's been brought to our attention by some extremely reliable sources that we would probably entrust our lives to, that Ms. Vandehei is now running around town making several statements. Number one, that she was not the source of that information for us. Well, you know, the fact of the matter is we never said that she was. So she's kind of giving herself away because, in fact, she did give us that information. And we'll talk more about that momentarily. But the other things that she's running around town and the county saying are that we're liars, we didn't have our facts straight. And honest to God, Mel, I don't know where all of this is coming from. However, you know, you served this community for nearly 12 years and have a pretty strong reputation for being honest, forthright, sincere, and just a downright straight shooter. I have that reputation as well, in addition to which I'm a journalist, both in this community, statewide, and with some national publications. So I make certain also that I have my facts straight. And the fact of the matter is, it was Jane Vandehei herself who brought this information to us about a year prior to our even bringing it up on the show. Jane Vandehei called me, discussed it with me, was in an uproar because she said it was going on illegally, and frankly, as a journalist, those conversations with Ms. Jane Vandehei were taped. So if she wants to dispute the fact that she was the source for this, she can go ahead and dispute it all day long. But the conversations were tape recorded.
I think it's important to also let the viewers know that one of the things that we were very upset about, and I say we're because Cheryl and I have regular conversations, not just with regard to shows, but future topics for shows and issues that we're investigating for shows, was that we have invited Ms. Vandehei on the show multiple times to have this discussion with her about our displeasure, about the lack of factual information being spewed out there in the community. Number one, her being the source of information. Number two, her not really so knowing what was going on, or not being as upset as we certainly had portrayed her to be.
Correct.
And we have gotten no response.
Well, we've gotten a response in that it's kind of been a non-response, really. She was invited to appear here when we taped our shows on December 4th. We were told by her executive assistant that she would not be able to appear. We then invited her to appear tonight, which we're taping this on December 18th. We were told she could not appear. 3.5 weeks prior to this taping, I sent an email, since Jane herself has refused to personally answer our emails. I sent an email back to her executive assistant. His name is John Fink, and I made this offer. I said, let us know what Thursday night, which is when we tape, what Thursday night Ms. Vandehei is available, and we'll certainly do our best to accommodate her. Now, that was 3.5 weeks
Correct.
prior to, or 2.5 weeks, I'm sorry, 2.5 weeks prior to tonight when we're taping this, and we have yet to get even an acknowledgement of having received that letter, even though I know they got it because I clicked the appropriate box before I sent it by email. So I know that they received it. They just have chosen not to answer. And I just think that it is important that people understand that, you know, I stayed on Jane for months, almost a year about this, saying, you know, if you feel this strongly about it, Jane, you need to contact somebody. You need to report this. She indicated to me she didn't want to report it to the district attorney, who at the time was District Attorney Joe Paulus. And the reason she didn't want to take it to him was because the chairman of the Aviation Committee was a gentleman by the name of Mark Nielsen. And coincidentally, Mr. Nielsen served on Mr. Paulus's re-election campaign for district attorney in the fall of 2002. So I said, okay, I understand your concern there. Take it to the other option that you have, and that's the state attorney general. Yeah, buddy, I'll do that, I'll do that. Well, she never did do that, and that's just poor leadership. I think along with that, the point needs to be made, and I'm not going to identify who this person was, because I don't know that, I guess I don't know that the information coming from Jane Vandehei is reliable. However, I will say this. She has on a number of occasions, and these conversations were recorded also because I felt that there was perhaps a story there. And so that I can always have my facts straight, I do record things like that when there is a potential story involved. Not that everyone who speaks with me on the phone has to worry about being tape recorded, but but you know, really, I mean, it's a matter of, it's a tool that I use as a journalist to make certain that A, facts are correct, quotes are accurate, and
You have the emphasis and the voice in the right place?
I have the emphasis, yeah. I've got the inflection in the right places and that kind of thing. So, you know, it's not done as some kind of a sneaky thing. It's a protection and a tool for both the source and myself as a journalist. But what she has told me on a few different occasions also is there is a very high-ranking county official here in Winnebago County whose wife, Ms. Vandehei, claims probably misappropriated some funds from a certain fund for seniors that she was overseeing. I told her about that also. I said, you know, you need to report that to someone. She assured me she was going to report that to the state attorney general. Now, to the best of my knowledge, as of December 18th, 2003, Vandehei hasn't done that either. So these things kind of lead me to a couple of conclusions. Either she has loose lips and she speaks about things without having all of her facts, or she embellishes things, and because they're embellished, then she can't hardly file a claim or a report or ask for an investigation with someone in any kind of an official capacity. Or the third thing is there is perhaps an element of truth in what she says, And she simply doesn't want to dirty her hands so that come election time, she's got everybody on her side, all rallied around her and circling her little wagon, and she's not offended anybody, and she can hopefully get reelected. I don't know which of the three it is, but it's got to be one of the three. And one person who is no longer on her side is me. This is why it's so painful. We have been friends of Jane's.
Correct.
And we thought she was a friend. But a friend would not, a true friend, would not do what she has done to us. And then to say the horrible things that she has, impugning our character and trying to damage our reputations, which I don't think she's really been successful in doing that. But the fact is, she tried.
Well, I think the thing that was probably, it's a lesson well learned. There are those people that once they've attained a certain stature in political office, forget where they came from.
Yes.
Forget the reason that they sought political office. Forget who they work for. It becomes more about getting reelected. It becomes more about being able to maintain appearances and titles, and not about doing the work of the people and for the people and about the people.
Correct.
And that is difficult to hear about anyone, more or less someone that you had, in my case, had respect for. The night that we were kind of sideswiped
She sandbagged us. There's
yeah,
no question.
sandbagged us. That's a better word for it. The night that we were basically sandbagged with non-answers and kind of a non-issue approach to this whole alleged illegal meeting. And again, there's no way that Cheryl and I would have been aware that there was an illegal meeting or a proposed illegal meeting for the Aviation Committee. We're not privy to a lot of that information by virtue of us not being on any county committees. The only way that that information could come to us would be via someone who was already on the county board or on the committee itself, who was privy to minutes and information from the inside. And I know that because I've been there through council meetings.
Yeah.
So I don't know what purpose it serves to find yourself hiding under the kitchen table, with the tablecloth drawn around you saying, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
If it was not an issue, then it should never have been brought to our attention. While we considered ourselves friends off camera, the difficulty in the job that Cheryl and I do here, while be it volunteer, is that we are here to try to provide a service to folks, and that is to inform you as to what's going on in your community. Keep you abreast of issues, keep you abreast of personalities. It undermines our ability to do those things effectively and factually when we have someone who is disingenuous with us, be it off camera and then we bring them on camera to talk to us and they say that they're ready to talk and then clam up.
And the thing is, she was ready to talk. I asked her about it probably a couple of weeks before we taped the show when we first booked her. I asked her if she was now ready to talk about it. Every time I spoke with her during that time, up until the night of the show, I asked her about it. And in fact, not only had she provided us with written documentation at the outset of this whole thing,
Correct.
the preceding year, but the night before we taped the show, she told me to contact either Pat Brennan from the county board or Jeanette Diakoff, who could give me even more information, including cell phone records of Mr. Nielsen's, because there was some questionable stuff going on in several people's minds apparently about Orion Flight Services and whether or not there was preferential treatment there, that kind of thing. I couldn't get a hold of Pat Brennan that night, and of course, with less than 24 hours before we taped the show, I called Jeanette Diakoff. Both these folks serve on the county board. Jeanette was very gracious. I went out to her home that Wednesday night, and indeed, she had an entire packet of information, probably about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. And I asked Jane again 20 minutes before we started taping the show the following night. if she was certain that she wanted to talk about this. She assured me that yes, in fact, she did. We came on the air and she sat right here and basically was mute about it. I mean, she downplayed the whole thing. Like there was nothing to this, and if somebody thought there was a problem, they should file a complaint with the appropriate place. And I said, well, then why hasn't anyone from the county done that? Well, apparently they don't think it's that big of a deal. Here's what I think happened, and I'm just speculating, but you know, the media gets used all the time to expose certain things. And I think that, I mean, whether or not there's something weird going on with that committee meeting, I don't know. I don't care. I mean, I care, but at this stage of the game, that's kind of a secondary issue because it is 2 years old. That meeting happened in October of 2001. But what disturbs me is that she made such a big issue out of this whole thing, then downplayed the whole thing like it was no big deal. And I think what the deal here really is, Mel, is she wanted to get this exposed, but she didn't want to be the one to expose it. She wanted to use us as a media source, and that's okay. The media gets used all the time to expose things. That's part of what the media does. So I didn't have a problem with that. But then, so she didn't look like she had any dirty part in this at all. She sat there and just, and that way she can keep everybody rallied around her.
Well, for me, this was it was a huge blow on multiple levels. Like I was saying before, I've always had a lot of respect for Jane. She is a very intelligent woman, well-educated, always came across as a very sincere and forthright person to me in the years that I have known her. What I have learned from this experience, and maybe should put other folks on warning, if you decide that you want to be in public office and you decide that you're going to betray the public's trust, beware, because we are watching, we are listening, and we will expose it. It doesn't matter who you are, what walk of life you come from, even if we call you friend, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility in the job that we do for the greater good of the public to let everyone know what is happening to the best of our ability. And portraying yourself to be someone that you're truly not in order to become reelected isn't going to fly very long. It won't fly very long. And when you come on this show, we will ask you the tough questions. We will keep your feet to the fire. And if you don't like that, or you think that's too tough for you, maybe you shouldn't come on the show. And for God's sake, when you do come on, don't lie, because we will know. And we will expose that as well. Now, that might not make us the most popular little show on cable TV, cable access, but I do believe that there's enough people out there who believe in us and trust us.
Most assuredly.
That we are going to do our very, very best to make sure that the information that we present is factual.
And the comments we get from people indicate that. They do trust us. This is a very highly watched program here on OCAT. And people do pay attention to what is presented on this show.
Well, and again, I guess my final comment about this issue is that it's always difficult for me to watch another elected official fall from grace. It is, to be an elected official and to be able to maintain an ethical and moral compass is difficult under good circumstances.
Sure.
But when you've lost that compass and the whole impetus of your existence is to become reelected and to maintain power, you can only see the spiral effect going down. And this is what I see happening here. And it saddens me because there are very few people in public office that you can hold up and say, you know, I really believe in this person. And this is what's wrong with public office and elected officials. And this is why so many people lose faith.
Well, and not only has Jane lost my respect and my friendship, but she has lost my vote. I would not, and typically I will not share with people who I'm going to or not going to vote for, but I can say right now, unequivocally, I would not vote for Jane Vandehei if she were running for chief cook and bottle washer in Winnebago County, somewhere in a cafeteria somewhere. I just simply wouldn't do it. I don't trust her anymore. I don't believe what she says. And she may be the most intelligent person around, but if you can't trust an elected official, a public servant, then certainly they shouldn't, you shouldn't be voting for them, and therefore I will not. But on the subject of county executive, there's some rumors running around town, and they're coming from some pretty high up people that Jane is going to have someone running against her when she runs for re-election.
Big choices for the people of Winnebago County now. Boy, look out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has heard this, but we've been hearing it for a number of weeks now, that intending to run, or at least considering a bid for county executive, is Oshkosh City Councilman and Deputy Mayor Mark Harris. Now, that presents us with a heck of a problem, because we don't trust either one of them. They both speak with forked tongue.
Batter.
Yeah, batter. So, I don't know. I think we need a viable candidate running for that position. Someone who's honest, who's going to serve the public well, who's not going to speak out of both sides of his or her mouth. Because let me just say one other thing about Jane, if we can just go back for a minute. She does talk out of both sides of her mouth. In the district attorney election a year ago, she was just slamming and bad-mouthing the people in Joe Paulus's office who didn't stand up for what was right, because she said he was so corrupt, and yet she wouldn't do the same thing. She won't stand up for what's right.
She's an elected official looking to get reelected.
She's a politician who is too busy keeping her job to do her job. And she's busy playing politics. So
it's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. We recently had Cheryl Owens on the show also.
That was just bad. The show was good.
The show was an excellent show.
The show was good, but I have to tell you, and I'm sure Carol is a very lovely person to know, to sit down with coffee and just chat. Mm-hmm. Just chat, maybe do some quilting, sewing, whatever.
She's a nice lady.
Nice conversationalist, good, sturdy individual. Legislatively, PU. I mean, really, there were no viable answers given to any of the questions. The party line crapola that was being spewed was nauseating to me. If you're not one of us, or you're not from our camp, or you're not I am so sick. Mm-hmm. I mean, do they go to like a special little Gestapo Republican school that says, yes, we'll all be Republicans and we're all going to march to that Republican line? Where did the individualism go? I mean, nobody thinks for themselves. Right. I mean, they have their pat answers for concealed weapons. They have their pat answers for pro-life. They have their pat answers for, gay marriages. I mean, they've got a standard answer for everything, and every single one of them spew it out.
Sure, and I mean, this is a woman who probably thinks she's creating wonderful legislation, but while communities are suffering because shared revenues have been cut, in part by her vote, she's saying, well, because I had a half a dozen people in my district call me about cell phone problems, people talking on cell phones while they're driving cars, she felt compelled to bring forth cell phone legislation, making it a crime and punishable by, some kind of fine structure, that if you're in a car accident and it's proven that you were talking on your cell phone at the time of the accident and that contributed to your having the accident, that you can be fined. And yet, I said to her, well, what about listening to the radio and so forth? Well, that, as you know, she said, falls under the umbrella of inattentive driving. Well, so is this. So she has busied herself while shared revenues are being cut all over the place, people are losing their jobs, manufacturing companies are falling by the wayside, and people can't get health care, while all of this kind of stuff is going on around her, and there are landmines being stepped on every which way that you can look, Mrs. Owens is busying herself with another layer of unnecessary and redundant legislation that we've already got with our inattentive driving laws.
Well, you know what I thought was really interesting is, and I'm paraphrasing here because I want to make sure everybody knows I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the tape here.
Yes.
One of the questions that you had asked is, kind of how is, and I think this was actually one of our viewers had asked us to ask this question, like, how is your district, Mrs. Owens, better today than it was in the previous 12 years before you served? How is it better today? Mm-hmm. She said, I guess it's not.
Well, with all due respect,
really,
though, she said when it comes to farming issues, it's not.
But she's a farmer.
She is a farmer. Yeah.
I mean, okay, if you're going to go to Madison and you've got issues and you're a farmer, would you not push the agenda for farmers and try to make the thing that you understand best? Would you not try to make that part of your life better?
Well, I suppose you could push that agenda, but I don't think you should be voting on it, and she very proudly stated she votes on farming issues.
Well, even if she's voting on it, she's not making their lives better, so what good did it do?
Well, that's true.
I have to tell you, I was absolutely aghast with the lack of responses.
Yeah. Well, one other thing that happened off camera when the cameras and the tape stopped rolling, she actually started asking me the question before the show ended. While I was trying to wrap up the show, she started asking the question. I had to ask her to just hold on for a second. But when the cameras went off and the tape stopped rolling, she asked me if I had called her office one time. And where that came from is because on another show with the Democratic challenger, Steve Dito, I had said that I could personally attest for the fact that Mrs. Owens does not return all of the phone calls to her office. And during the show, she had made a comment that she returns calls to her constituents first and then to other people second, and she will either try and help that person or she'll refer them to their own representative. Yes, indeed. A number of years ago, I did call Mrs. Owens. And no, in fact, she is not my representative. Thank God for that, because I don't know what I would do if she were. Although my own isn't much better, in my opinion. But she did not return phone calls. And there were a couple of phone calls and an email that were directed toward her. She didn't respond to any of those methods of communication from me. And perhaps, I think the problem here is that before they start returning phone calls, maybe they look you up on a roster or something and see if you're in their district, and then they decide, because she said right out that she only returns phone calls first to the people in her district. Now that's not right, and here's why. Because number one, I may have just moved into her district, and I may not have been able to vote yet in an election, so I may not be on any list. And you don't always, I've never had to give my address to someone when I've called a lawmaker, so they don't know what your address is, and they can't track it on any kind of a map or anything. I may have just moved into her district. I may work in a business in her district that is being affected by some kind of pending legislation. I may be a business owner in that district. There could be any number of reasons why I would want to call a representative. Maybe I just want to lobby a representative because there's a burning issue that I think as many representatives as possible should be contacted about. I don't need to be in someone's district to call them. They are public servants and they're paid extremely well. And by God, if you get a phone call from someone, be a professional, earn your money, and return the phone call. And I don't care if you're Carol Owens from the 53rd Assembly District or Joe Blow from the 1002nd. Return phone calls. That's what professionals do, especially if you're there to serve the public.
Well, but again, I think we go back to the same thing that we were talking about with Ms. Vandehay, is that some of these folks are in too long, and the only thing that really matters is, are you a voter? And is there something that I can get from you?
Yeah.
And that's
Well-
the problem, and that's why term limits are imperative. I mean, and you know, we can debate that till the cows come home. No pun intended. But seriously, it's distressing to me because I see when we were talking to Mrs. Owens, asking her if she's attended town board meetings or city council meetings for those entities within her district. She said, well, no, she didn't do that because she had far too many.
She said she didn't go to all of them. She hasn't been to any of them, apparently, because she was
Well, and
never at Oshkosh's. And we're
Not
the biggest in her
Oshkosh's,
district.
not Amro's. I mean, when I was calling around about the losses in her district of shared revenue and the monies, and I'm just a talk show host, so and I made phone calls to just about every town to find out what their losses were, and the consensus is that, you know, Melanie, do what you can to convince these people that we are in deep trouble, and this is really only the very first phase of it, and next year there is nowhere to go. I mean, there is nowhere to go, and we've got the Northwestern saying that we're crying wolf, and oh my God, you know, we're making this all up. You know, these municipalities, these townships, these villages are in serious, serious trouble, and ipso facto, so are the taxpayers.
That's right. We
But
did
they don't
get a we got a letter here, and it's a copy of a letter from Phil Levine, who owns Jeff's on Rugby, with his wife Lisa. We're going to be putting this on the website, but I believe he has also sent this to a letter to the editor to get it published in the Northwestern. Apparently on Tuesday, the 16th of December, there was a letter to the editor from Kathleen Propp, who is with Breathe Free Oshkosh. And this letter really kind of slammed Jeff's on Rugby because a customer apparently lit up at the bar area during one of their smoke-free periods. And now Kathy Propp wasn't in the restaurant at the time, but someone who was phoned her, didn't give her all the specifics, whether intentionally or because they didn't know them, I don't know. But she didn't have all the facts, and instead of calling Jeff's on Rugby or Phil at home to get the facts, she wrote a pretty scathing letter to the editor, and it appeared, as I said, in the letter to the editor column on the op-ed page on Tuesday, December 16th. So Mr. Levine has written a response. He's gotten this to us, and as I said, we will be getting it on the website, and I'd like to just read it here. It said, this letter is in response to Kathleen Propp's letter to the editor dated December 16, 2003. Mrs. Propp is correct to say that a patron lit a cigarette at Jeff's on Rugby on a smoke-free Thursday. Now for our side of the story. First, Mrs. Propp was not in attendance. She got her information from a couple who was at Jeff's that evening. Through talking to the employees who were on duty that evening, these are the facts of this situation. A customer lit a cigarette at the bar sometime between 5:30 and 7 p.m. As soon as it came to my bartender's attention, approximately 1/2 of a cigarette later, he asked the customer to put it out, which the customer did. The patrons, who eventually told Mrs. Propp of this, went into the dining room and asked their waitress about our smoking policy. This waitress was in training and was working only her second shift, and she did misinform those customers that she thought it was Wednesday. In other words, that smoke-free dining was on Wednesdays. Not an intentional lie, but an honest mistake. Our enforcement procedure is exactly how Breathe Free Oshkosh has written it in their ordinance. This is not the first time this has happened, where a customer has been asked to put out their cigarette during a non-smoking time. But in each case, we handled the situation the way Breathe Free's ordinance, if passed, mandates. Now, Mrs. Propp states that we have to, quote, clean up our act, unquote. Apparently, following Breathe Free's ordinance is still not good enough. We've worked awfully hard at Jeff's to reach a compromise with Kathy Propp and Breathe Free. But how can a compromise be reached with people who aren't even happy with their own demands? Where will this intolerance end?
Yay!
Now,
Very good letter,
he
Phil.
has also talked with Kathy Propp. According to him, she has offered to write some kind of a retraction to the newspaper. However, the newspaper has a policy that says that, you know, you can't have letters to the editor published more than once within a 30-day period. So, you know.
Tell her to send it to us. We'll put it on our website that you can read what she has to
Yes,
say.
we'd be happy to put it on our website if she'd like to. And, you know, www.ionoshkosh.com, the website, that's the website address. The email address is right there on the website, and we'll be happy to get it on. And so that's a good thing. But it is a shame that she didn't take the time to find out the facts. And the fact of the matter is that, just as he points out, even if their referendum passes at the voting booth and the ballot box in April, still, if a customer lights up, I mean, just having an enforcement policy like that is not, or you know, a referendum like that, an ordinance like that, it doesn't mean that somebody is not going to mistakenly light up a cigarette. The thing is, they
Or some of
handled
us
it.
might actually do it purposely.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they asked the patron to put it out, and that is, as his letter states, exactly what the ordinance requires them to do.
But see, here's the wrong mindset. See, Mr. Levine and his wife and people like them who are trying so hard to appease a special interest group have failed to learn one important thing. These smoke Nazis will never be appeased. You will never be able to do it well enough. It will never suffice. It will never be enough. And they've come out and said nothing less than that themselves.
Right.
This is nothing but a first step in a long line of liberties to be taken away. And if they could go after the drinking, and they could go after the gambling, and they could go after anything else that they could possibly think of and call themselves gamble-free Oshkosh, and they could call themselves drink-free Oshkosh, whatever they want to call themselves, it will never be enough for people who think that they know what's in the best interest of all of us, because it's never enough. It will never be enough. And I feel sorry for Mr. Levine and Mrs. Levine and all those folks at Jeff's and other restaurants like them who have tried to be very respectful, who have tried to be, you know, coming to the table, extending the olive branch, saying, what can we do to make it better? What can we do to be better business owners? And then basically not just having your hand slapped, but taking a meat cleaver to it in the middle of the table.
Right.
So, you know, really, shame on you folks, because once again, you know, you've shown folks like Mr. Levine and his wife and other restaurateurs and tavern owners that it really does not pay to try to speak in a rational fashion, because your demands are irrational. And you go overboard every single time, because there is no middle ground for you. And that is what's going to beat you. You're going to beat yourself because you just can't find it in your heart or in your brains to come to the table and find that middle ground where we can all live together and be respectful of one another.
Coexist.
Exactly.
But, you know, and honestly, Mel, I don't know what's going to happen at the polls come April. I don't know. But I will say this. When I spoke with Mr. Levine night before we taped this, and he talked about getting this letter to me, he said that he has gotten so many phone calls of support from people, many of whom are smokers, who are non-smokers, who have said, you know, we just think that this letter was just in poor taste. It was tacky, so on and so forth. And they support Jeff's on Rugby.
Well, because they're starting to see that it is exactly what these folks said it was going to be.
And like I said, these are non-smokers.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to be a smoker to see that the error in the ways of conducting business. This Breathe Free Oshkosh is a group of overzealous individuals, many of which have had an agenda for some time, for whatever reason it is, and they feel as though that their rights supersede those of everyone else around them.
Well,
and there is no
they have
tolerance.
so stated that.
Well, and there is no tolerance for any other lifestyle, and it's very interesting. Very interesting. You know.
I agree. On one of our last segments, one of our last Another Viewpoint segments, we had talked about a letter that you had received from a company called Empowerment Inc. or
Empower Inc.
And we had briefly told people about that. For those
Actually, I kind of went on a bit of a rant. Yeah.
well, but we didn't have a lot of the specifics. Basically, this is a company, for those who didn't see that show, this is a company that sends out letters to employers saying that, you know, you can hire these immigrants and so forth. And why don't you explain it? Because it was sent to you. Briefly explain what the program is. And then Melanie went so far as to do some additional research, as we had promised.
Made a phone call.
And she made a phone call, and she has some very interesting things to share.
Well, I don't know if interesting is what it is. Troubling, I think, is probably more. As Cheryl stated in one of our other segments, Another Viewpoint, I just went on this rant because in this extremely tough economy, and in the state of Wisconsin, where we have seen record numbers of losses of jobs, manufacturing predominantly, most of our jobs being shipped overseas, okay, Asia, China, South Korea, what have you. This letter couldn't have come at a worse time. I think it came like just a few weeks after the fact that it was announced that we'd hit like a 9 or 10 year all-time high in unemployment. This Empower Inc. is it's a recruiting service for skilled workers overseas. And what they do is they bring people from South Korea and China over to the United States, and you can hire people from there for your businesses. And one of the things that I really got horked off about is it said, you know, there's no fees for sponsoring the employees or for their services. It takes about 18 months so that these folks can get their green cards, and then of course they have an opportunity to become legal citizens. So I thought, well, you know, I have to tell you, it really irritates me because most of our jobs, manufacturing and otherwise, have gone over to none other than China and South Korea and what have you. But now we're bringing them back over here as though we don't have enough unemployed people already. We can't find people to fill the jobs here in the United States. So I called these folks, and I talked to this young lady, very nice young lady, and I asked her what this story was. I mean, what's the deal? Well, John Yon, the president of Empower Inc., has lived here for approximately 30 years, and he's from, yes, you guessed it, South Korea. And he started this company for shortage-based companies. And I said, well, in 2003, what would those be? Because I don't know that there's any employment shortage-based companies out there. I mean, I really don't know of any. Well, she started talking about hairstylists. Well, I don't know, in Oshkosh alone, we have quite a few hair salons. Mm-hmm. So, and she gave me some other ones. And I was specifically asking about, obviously, healthcare. It's very interesting how this whole system works. The clients, which are the people over in South Korea, pay a fee. They didn't want to tell me what the fee was, but they pay in 3 increments. The first starts with a job offer from someone like myself. I offer a job. Then the client that they pick them, pays the first installment of the fee. The second is once you go to the alien employment, which takes about 6 to 8 months. Evidently, they do some background checks, making sure that these folks aren't a Unabomber or whatever. And then, of course, they pay another fee. And then the third stage is when they go to the INS, and this all takes about 18 months, you know, collectively. And the INS then will decide, you know, do they get a green card and can they come over here? Now, this is the part, now you're going to love this, this is the part that really frosted my cookies. I said, well, okay, what happens now if, let's say, because it takes 18 months to get these people here. In 18 months,
If you've got a job shortage.
if I had a job shortage, I'm out of business. Let's say I need 5 people in 18 months. My business could be right down the old crapper.
You're better off going to Manpower or
well,
something
I was just
like
going
that.
to say, you know, you could hire a bunch of college kids for, transient labor. But nonetheless, okay. I said, okay, so let's say I ask you for 5 people. It takes 18 months. And after the 18 months, I don't need them anymore. Not a problem. Really? Well, what are you going to do with these 5 people? Oh, they're still coming to the United States because they paid their fees. I said, but they don't have a job. But they have a green card because you offered them a job. So they still come. I just now have to sign a letter that says that I've released them from their obligation to work for me because I didn't need them anymore, but they're free to go work for someone else.
Even if they've never worked a day for you?
Never worked a day. And I said, well, let me just ask you this, because here's my concern. All right, now they're free to roam the United States wherever. I said, well, how do I know who I'm getting? I mean, I get to interview these people? Oh, we take care of all of that. We do background checks. I said, well, that's great. You might like them, but what if I don't? What if, maybe we just don't click, So you like them, I don't.
I can't imagine anyone not clicking with you.
Hard to believe as easygoing as I am. And she said, well, then you just don't have to hire them. I said, yeah, but they're here.
And what got their green card.
They got their green card. What are you going to do? Send me somebody new? Well, sure, we can do that. So we just keep boating them over. Nobody's got a job.
Well, they may or they may not.
Well, they don't have a job with me.
Yeah, they don't have a job.
Who knows? I could go through 20 of these folks and never click with a single one, but every one of them's got a green card.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but here's the part that bothered me. And I said, well, what kind of responsibility does a person like me, let's just say, intending to potentially hire, what kind of responsibility do I have that if once they get over into this country and I don't hire them because I don't like them or the jobs are gone, isn't there some responsibility that I would have to make sure that these folks aren't coming over or they don't get in any kind of trouble? I mean, let's be honest, with the 9/11 situation, how do you not know that you're not bringing someone into this country that could potentially be a problem, drug runner? You don't know. I mean, I'm not insinuating that everybody from South Korea or China is a drug runner, but you don't know.
And especially when you haven't had an opportunity to talk to them
No.
at all.
Well, it gets even better because I specifically asked about healthcare because that, of course, has always been my background. She was so excited to talk to me about healthcare. See, she just thought we were talking kind of ambiguously here. And I brought up healthcare. She said, oh, my goodness, we just started a whole new program, brand new. You need to talk to Maria because she knows everything about healthcare. But they're not really sure what's going to happen as far as how the credentialing for nursing certificates and education are going to cross over from Russia and South America and be applicable in the United States. Because obviously every country has different requirements of their staff than potentially we do here. In order to be a licensed practical nurse in the United States, in the state of Wisconsin, you have a set of requirements. Now, do you still have those same requirements in South Africa, India, Russia? I find it difficult to believe that you would because, quite frankly, their facilities are so antiquated that I would find it difficult that they had the same types of equipment and technology to work with just due to the financial environment that they're in. So, just so that you know, we can invite anybody here that we want. They don't even have to take a job. We don't even have to give them one, but they all have green cards. Isn't that nice? So we can have more people over here that we can't afford.
Can take the jobs that otherwise American citizens might be able to get.
Which is such a crock because when this company was started in the 70s, this guy was bringing people over for sewing operations. She kind of gave me the background on this guy, and I thought, what, were they all working at Oshkosh-B'gosh? Oh, that's right. Now they moved everything over there. So he should just kind of keep his people over there and work at the Oshkosh-B'gosh Lo Chung, or actually Lo Ching, because they don't pay.
Lo Ching, that's good. That's good. Couple of things, real briefly here, because our time is starting to run out.
Did I talk too long on that one? Because that just irritated me.
We've just had a few major issues that needed to be addressed. So want to hit on a couple of these shorter ones for a second. Obviously, this is the winter season and it's cold, and for people who may have some need for having weatherization work done around their homes, replacing things like furnaces and stuff like that. There are some programs out there. I should say you have to qualify for this stuff before you have the work done. You qualify for it, and then they actually contract with whomever to perform the work. But these are some really wonderful services. Like furnaces, if you qualify, they will pay up to 90% of the cost of your furnace, which is tremendous. It really is. Focus on Energy is one of these programs, and we've got some phone numbers here. For Focus on Energy, their telephone number is 1-800-762-7077. Okay, that's 1-800-762-7077. Advocap, right here in town, is another good resource. They can perform all kinds of weatherization stuff around your house, and in most cases it's done free of charge. Another wonderful service. You do have to qualify, and again, I will stress, you need to call them first, get qualified. There's an application process, and then they'll make the arrangements. But Advocap's number is 426-0150. And, just call beforehand. I can't stress that enough. And, talk to these folks. And if you feel that you should qualify and they're telling you that you don't, ask them specific questions and pursue it a little bit. My experience from talking to some folks and making some calls myself is that sometimes, they don't ask the right questions, therefore they don't get the right information, and they may end up accidentally disqualifying you. So, if something doesn't make sense, stick with it until it does make sense. It's definitely worth it. But these are wonderful programs that are available. We're all paying into the program.
That's right.
If you look on your utility bill, there's like $1.40 every month that you're charged on your Wisconsin Public Service bill that goes in to fund these programs. So the money is there. We've all helped pay for it. And if you are in need of something like this, by all means, contact these folks.
People also need to get past, with unemployment being what it is, and so many families in this community alone struggling with that unemployment factor, or one of the spouses losing the position, or a single person who's trying to be self-supporting and not having a job. I think that most of us in this community were raised that you tough it out and you do it on your own, and
have pride,
and there's other people who have it much worse. There is no shame in getting help when you have worked your entire life and helped others, and it's okay. And then when you can do more, you make sure that you do a little something extra for another charity or what have you.
That's right.
Speaking of what Cheryl was talking about, the Public Service Commission some time ago has, and this is in keeping with Cheryl's suggestion, that you may want to pay close attention to these programs, especially now during the heating season. The Wisconsin Public Service Commission has granted a rate increase of 9.5% for electrical services and a 2.3% increase for gas rates. That was filed back in April. Those rates are expected to go into effect around January 1st. The impact probably won't be known for probably several days, but it is a significant hike. It's a significant hike during these really, really tough times. So if we will have replay times on at the end of our show, so if you didn't catch those numbers, the show will be back on again, so that you certainly can get those numbers again, and don't be afraid to call.
That's right. Judge Haase recently left the bench after many years of service.
22.
We are going to be, we're very honored to be able to have Judge Haase on the show. He will be coming on the show during one of our shows coming up in January. We wanted to get him on before he actually left the bench, but he had some scheduling conflicts. He was a little busy cleaning out his desk after that many years.
After 22 years, and maybe if we get him after he's had a little time to relax, he'll have great humor and a lot more time to reflect and give us some good stories that maybe he would have forgotten about otherwise.
That's right.
Congratulations, Judge. You did a wonderful job, public service. It is not an easy thing to do. You serve with great dignity and honor, and we were awfully fortunate to have you. I hope your family enjoys the time you have with them now.
Hear, hear. I want to thank the Oshkosh Public School District. I had the occasion, I've got a niece and I've got two nephews, and both nephews are in the Oshkosh Public School System. And I had the pleasure, as I have for the last umpteen years that they've been around, to attend their Christmas programs this holiday season. And you know, there are a lot of Christmas programs, not Christmas programs, let me rephrase that. There are a lot of organizations, school districts, what have you, throughout this country that are getting away from, they will no longer allow the Christian type religious based songs to be included, and yet they can celebrate the menorah and what have you. They can mention things like Hanukkah, but they're not allowing the traditional religious Christmas songs in. And
Our country's traditional Christmas.
correct, yes. Judeo-Christian type
Yes.
songs. And it was so, and that's ridiculous. It really is. We've gotten so far the other side with political correctness, it makes me want to spit up. But in any event, you know, it is. It's ridiculous because everybody seems to have rights and be able to do things except us, you know? And that's just wrong.
Well, and it'll keep going until we fight back, so.
Well, and that's why I want to thank the Oshkosh Public School District, because they allowed these traditional religious Judeo-Christian songs to be included. And, you know, they tried to make sure that every ethnicity was represented. And that's the way it should be. Don't just represent the other ones and leave out our own. And so a huge thank you. The Christmas programs were wonderful, by the way. I was very proud of my nephews, and
Such a good auntie.
yeah, well, my niece is, you know, she's in daycare, but her program's not part of the Oshkosh Public School District, but hers was wonderful also. So,
They're cute and they're that little.
and two other very quick things. One of our volunteers on this show, Joseph Sontag, has had kind of a serious health situation come up just a few days prior to our taping this, and he, as of this taping, he is hospitalized. We may be without him for an extended period of time, and we just want to wish his family the very best, and certainly wish him the very best. Joseph, we miss you, but
We love you.
and we do love you, and you just do what you need to do, and when you're feeling better, you come back to us. You have a home here with us on Eye on Oshkosh. And one of our other volunteers, Dustin White, may or may not be leaving. He thinks he maybe has a job in another community where he would not be able to commute. So this may or may not be his last show with us tonight. So Dustin, if it is, thank you for all your months
Yes.
of service.
We love you
But-
too, Dustin.
Yes, we do, but we do hope that that you'll find a way to stick around. So on that note, we're going to have to start to wrap up here. Please visit our website. We've got a section there called Community. Click on that. It's an interactive community. You can participate. And we've got a lot of cool things on there. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.